So there's been a lot of news that has broken over the last couple of hours. It was been quite a busy start to the week for myself after the Birmingham story, and then we had the IPL mega auction. We had that story to come out. We had obviously Dean Alger press conference that happened today ahead of the series, where he revealed some interesting things. And also, we had the sad update that Keegan Petersen will be out of the New Zealand tour due to COVID-19. And this has obviously sparked a large debate within the community again, amongst the fans, amongst all of us, on talking about who should be replacing Keegan within the starting lineup. But there's also been some misconceptions, I feel, from what has been told by Dean and what we are interpreting or have accepted as the truth. So we're going to discuss everything on this video today. We're going to discuss Dean's press conference, of course, as well as who we feel should come into the team to replace Keegan Petersen in that top order. But before we get going, before we get started, you know what you have to do. You have to click subscribe, click that notification bell for all future videos as well. And also don't forget to subscribe to Cricket Fanatics Magazine monthly. Every issue is 100% free, straight into your inbox every single month, including the latest issue. So go ahead to the link in the description, enter your name and email address, and you'll get emails every single month from us with the latest issue, 100% free. So without further ado, guys, let's get straight into today's video. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Cricket Fanatics Magazine. This is your daily show. I'm your host, Khalid. This is my co-host, Aditya. And today we will be chatting about South Africa, the Dean Alger press conference, what has been said in there, as well as the KP news and who we feel should come into the team. So there's a lot to discuss today. We've got Munir also joining us. He hasn't obviously joined us in a very long time, but he's with us today. How's it, Munir? Good to see you.
How's it,
Um,
Khalid?
Good. Yeah. So we're going to be chatting about all of this today, and we're going to get everybody's views on what we think about this. But first and foremost, let's just get the story straight. Well, at least I'll try to get my interpretation of what I heard in Dean Alger's press conference. Teacher, you were there, so you can give us your interpretation of it too. But when Dean Alger said that Cyril Earvier and where Cyril Earvier and Zubair Hamza are pushing for that number 3 spot, um, my interpretation of the whole situation has always been that Cyril Earvier should be the replacement for or backup opener. I was always under the impression that Zubair Hamza would be the next in line number 3 if Keegan Petersen does fall out, and that Ryan Rickleton would be the backup keeper or the backup number 4 if Rassie van der Dussen is not selected. So that was my understanding of the situation. But according to Dean Alger in his press conference, he said that Zubair Hamza and Cyril Earvier will be pushing for the position. Now, also from my understanding is that when the squad was announced, and I'll put the squad on the screen right now because it's now been updated after Keegan Petersen is out. My understanding was, or I got some news that there were some non-traveling reserves that were also available in case something happened. And I think Zubair Hamza was one of those traveling reserves. So he's just coming now into the squad. Whether he will come straight into the starting lineup or not is still up for debate, because if it was a straightforward answer, then Dean would have given us a straightforward answer and said straight out that Zubair Hamza would start, or straight out that Cyril Earvier would start. The fact that they said pushing for it, they're going to obviously be looking at the two players and deciding between who of the two should get the start. Now, Zubair, based on his current form, um, with regards to the VP Blitz domestically, does not deserve an opportunity compared to Sarel Evia. If you look at the two players, Sarel Evia has been more informed this season when it comes to domestic cricket. SAA as well is included in their first class tallies, but if you look at 2021 season so far, Sarel Evia averages 63.62. Um, and he has 100 to his name and a 50 to his name, a 350s to his name with a high score of 163 and scored 509 runs. Um, Zubair Hamza currently sitting on an average of 42.50 with a high score of 125, 100, 150 in 6 matches, 11 innings. So that's the two players compared to each other. The difference is that Sarel Eva has opened the batting and Zubair Hamza is a number three batter. So Sarel Eva hasn't necessarily been seen as a number three batter. Now, I'm going to look at the situation now and think, and we can discuss it now as well. I want to hear Aditya's thoughts. I want to hear Munir's thoughts as well on who they think should shuffle around, because to me, it's still open. There hasn't been a decision made 100%. We know that Zubair Hamza is now part of the squad, and we know now that Sadal Irvia has been in the squad for some time. Um, and we need to look at who's going to be the best option based on the middles that they play, based on the conditions, based on all of those type of things. They need to look at it. Now, the difficult part is that Aiden Markram hasn't necessarily been in the best of form. Now, we do have certain people that say Aiden should be dropped. Some people even saying Aiden should move down the order and Sadal Ever should get a start. So there has been loads of debates amongst all of us as fans, but I want to hear your thoughts as well. So Aditya, let's start with you. If you had the choice at this moment, what will that top three be for you? Or let's say top four. What will your top four be?
Based on current form, I'd go with Dean, Aiden, Rassi, and Ryan Rickleton. So for this series, for this series.
Interesting. Okay, let's go to Munir and then Werner. Munir, what would you do?
I would have Aiden Usaro. I'm still unsure. I would have Dean. This is where it gets a bit difficult because I can see why you say Hamza deserves a spot, but he hasn't been on form recently. But I think, like cricket's a sport where over the long run, you have to look over the long run. So you could select a bowler for one game and they take 5 wickets, and then you could say that they're the next big thing. But how many players have played 5 games, have done really well, then 20 games down the line and their averages are bad. So I think for Zubair Hamza, he's only been given 5 games, and in those 5 games, he's averaging 18. So then people say he's not good enough, or they look at this season, they say he's not good enough. But you can't earmark a player and say that they're good enough to play international cricket and then only give him 5 games. It makes no sense. And Zubair Hamza's been performing well over his entire domestic career, and I think he deserves a spot. Jacques Kallis only averaged 8 after 5 games. So imagine if Jacques Kallis was in the team now, people would be calling for his head, and he wouldn't. He wouldn't play another game for South Africa. So I think Zubair Hamza deserves a spot in the team ahead of Ryan Rickleton, because I think he was earmarked first. So Zubair Hamza played 2 years ago. I think he deserves another spot.
It's an interesting point. Vern, I just want to, so based on Munir's point, before we go to Werner, so if the decision is to pick on form, then Hamza doesn't get a position. This is from my opinion. But if it's picked on, like Munir is talking about, if you've earmarked a player as the next best thing, etc., and he was unfairly dropped, I feel, back in the day when he got the opportunity to play for South Africa. I feel that they didn't give him a long enough opportunity, even though he scored 60 in India in difficult conditions, in a team that was failing. He also scored a 40 on his debut against Pakistan, and there was a lot of positives with regards to Zubair Hamza, and all of you guys know that I'm a fan of Zubair Hamza too. But in this particular case, Saddle's been with the team. But if you take Munir's point of view, and I just look at the two guys when it comes to first class cricket, particularly for franchises, because I don't look at the provincial stuff, because ultimately the provincial things were 3-day cricket, and that's that's how it used to be. Right now, at the moment, they've kind of pushed it all into one. So I'm not looking at this season, but just to take it from the when franchise season was still around, and you look at Sarel Ewe's average for the Dolphins, it doesn't tell the same picture as what his recent form has been. So there has been a bit of a massive difference. So in the 40 matches, he's played 71 innings for the Dolphins in franchise cricket, 4-day cricket. He only averages 38.97. And when you look at Zubair Hamza's average for the Cape Cobras in 28 games in 47 innings, he averages 43.23. So that's the massive difference between the two. Yet Sarel has played loads of games more than Zubair Hamza. But if you're looking at current form, definitely Sarel gets the nod when it comes to that. But my concern is that they will be pushing a guy into a position that is not maybe his position based on that form. So I do want to talk about that a little bit later, but let's just get Werner's thoughts first and foremost, because when it comes to the picking order, there needs to be some consistency when they're selecting people. That's what I want to see, a consistency. But we'll talk about that a little later. Werner, what would you do in the situation? Hey, you're breaking up completely.
In the line with the ODI squad in it.
Just can you restart that, please?
Better?
Just restart. Yeah, it's fine now. Just restart what you said.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry. No, personally, I'd love to see Ryan Rickleton play. He's in such a great vein of form, and he has been with the ODI squad for a long time, and he hasn't gotten an opportunity. He was in the T20 squad, didn't get the opportunity, and now he's with the test team. But at the same time, Arvia has been waiting a long time. Since he went to Pakistan and he went to the West Indies and now the India series, and he still hasn't had that opportunity. And even if it is free, I don't think it's going to make a major difference. So I'm in between the two, to be honest. I would definitely not play Hamza. Fair enough to bring him into the squad if they decide that he is the next in line to come into the squad. I actually personally would have gone with Tony DeZorzi at this stage, and based on form over the last couple of seasons and the way Tony played the SIA series. Even though Hamza got 100, it was in the last match, and still it was a Bloemfontein pitch that was quite flat. So I don't read too much into it, even though it was an SAA game. Otherwise, he hasn't really scored 100 in the past few seasons. So I would have probably gone with Tony DeZorzi and brought him into the squad. And it would have been a change as well. Also a left-hander, something different in the middle order. But yeah, so I would love to see Ryan Rickleton personally. He's a young guy in good form, but I would not be upset if they give Advi a chance. I believe he deserves a chance as well. I don't know how he feels about batting at 3. I'm sure he'll jump at the chance because any chance at this stage will be great for him. But I still think he'd prefer opening. So we'll see how they go. I expect them to go with Arvia, but I'd love to see Ryan Rickleton.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you on that fact. So when it comes to what the order should be currently, Zubair Hamza has not proven himself in the last 2 seasons actually at the Cobras. I think he'd admitted himself at Western Province he hasn't been at his best. He's been struggling, and I don't know what the reasons are. There might be multiple reasons. There might be unrest at Western Province. There might be the captaincy too much, or whatever the case may be. But from that perspective, I don't necessarily agree with him getting the start straight away when there are people in form within the team. And I want to be consistent with regards to that because I've criticized selections before by saying this. So when it comes to a player that I like, I need to keep consistency. It's just like the same thing with Aiden Markram. I don't believe that pushing Aiden Markram down to 4 just to keep him in the side is the right decision from a South African point of view. I think he should fight for his spot as an opener. That's where he's played, and that's what he's the spot that he plays at. And if they drop him out to the side, they should bring Cyril Ewe straight into the team. Ryan Rickleton has played as a number 4 for the Lions recently. Now, there are arguments against him maybe getting a opportunity so early, but I've always seen him as the backup keeper um, in this particular team. If you're going to look at the picking order, then Cal Verreynne and Ryan Rickleton are the 2 best keepers in the country when it comes to that and with regards to runs. So I saw him as the backup keeper based on what the narrative has been from Boucher's side. He's always spoken about certain players as backups for certain positions. Now, looking at this current situation, Ryan Rickleton is coming off an amazing performance in the 4 days competition. He's had time in New Zealand. He's also he has some experience. He spoke to us about it in his interview with us, and he has a certain understanding of what the conditions will most likely bring. So that insight is also very important. Now, I understand Munir's point, and Munir can also step in over here to counter attack. South Africa need to make a clear. I would like to see a clear plan on how they're going to do these elections, because there are some weird things that happen all of a sudden. Are they going to give people that have toiled away at the basic cricket for a long period of time the opportunity, or are they going to be picking on form, or are they going to do a bit of both? Because it seems to me that there isn't a synergy and a consistency in the decisions that they make when it comes to selecting players. So when I look at it, for example, the way they treated Zubair Hamza back then against England, I think that was wrong. But then again, when I look at it, Keegan Petersen was looked at before Zubair Hamza when it comes to that number 3 position. People were looking at him. He picked up a lot of injuries, and therefore I think Zubair got the head start ahead of him and got the opportunity ahead of Keegan. To be fair, I think that's actually what took place if we look at the details of what happened there. Because I remember Keegan Petersen being talked about, and then I remember him getting injured as well. And I think that's blocked his transition into the team. Looking at this right now, I don't think we should look at it, and I don't think we should be criticizing players in the public before it has even been the selection has even taken place. I'm seeing Zubair Hamza getting a lot of hate on Twitter and on social media, etc., before he's even been selected in the team, based on a couple of news stories and narratives that have been written. Now, Aditya, you were in the presser. What was Dean's exact words when it comes to it? Because there's that quote where he says Zubair, but he also adds to that afterwards. He adds a section about Cyril Ewe specifically after that. So if you just want to share that with us.
Yes, he was obviously asked about the Keegan Petersen situation and who would replace him, and he almost instantly said that Cyril Ewe was the front runner there because he's been with the team for a long time, and Dean seemed to love his attitude and so on. And then he talked about Zubair Hamza, and he said that Cyril Ewe and Zubair Hamza will be fighting for that position. Um, so that was pretty much it. But I think my view of that entire situation was that first of all, that press conference was fairly heated uh, because there were a lot of non-cricketing questions there, and that obviously uh, irritated Dinago quite a bit. But my view of the situation was that Dean probably shouldn't have mentioned that Cyril and Zubair were going to be front runners for that position, given that the test is not going to begin till the 17th. Because what you're doing basically is that you're telling all the other players who are in the running for a spot in the team that they have no chance before they even leave for New Zealand. So I don't know. Personally, I wasn't particularly a fan of the decision he names players straight away. Given that that press release which confirmed that Keegan Petersen had COVID came out, I think, just about 2 hours uh, before that press conference. So yeah, I was a bit uncomfortable there.
Munir, you can add to your point because it is an interesting point because there was some discussions that I heard from Victor and from Boucher before that they want to give people that have toiled away in domestic cricket opportunities when the chances arise that they're going to be picking those guys. And I think like the likes of Peter Malan, Sarel Eerweer, those type of guys have been given opportunities because of their last 3 seasons and what has happened in the last 3 seasons. But then that consistency needs to remain true when picking players for SIA, etc. But you can add to your points with regards to it after you've heard all of us and what we thought about, what we think about it. Why would you see Zubair Hamza as the person that comes straight in? What is your reasoning behind that?
Yeah, it's not Zubair Hamza, like just him. It's just the overall structure. I think there's no like consistency. So like you said, Aiden Markram, for example, he gets loads of even if he's not in form, they're like
Bro, you're fading out. I can't. Your voice is, yeah.
they're saying so for Aiden Markram, for example, he gets loads of opportunities. Even if he's not in form, then he gets to play himself in form. People say, "Oh, I know what he can do," and they give him a lot of opportunities. Same's happened with Andile, for example, in the one-day team or the T20 team. They give him loads and loads of opportunities. So some players get a lot of opportunities, and some players get 5 tests, and then they don't get any more opportunities. So I feel like for Zubair, for example, I think there needs to be consistency. So they need to say whether we're going to pick 11 players just on form. So like the best 11 players in the country will play. So if that's not Aiden, it's like whoever's performing domestically in the test team, or they're going to say we're going to pick Aiden and we're gonna persist with him. But in saying that, then they're going to persist with someone else for a long time. Because, like I said, cricket's a sport where you have to look over the long term. So, like I said, Jacques Ellis averaged 8 in his first 5 tests. So, if this was Jacques Ellis now getting into the team, imagine he averaged 8 after 5 tests, and how people would be reacting to that. I don't think he would get another test. So, I think there needs to be some consistency with that, and at least give an order and say Zubair is next in line, or because a season can go bad in domestic cricket. And I don't think one good domestic cricket season deserves you to get a spot over someone else who's maybe been better than you for the past 4, 5, 6 years. And yeah, just my opinion on it. I know people would say that form is probably better indicator, but like for me, cricket, it's a long run sport, so I think you have to look over the long run, because there's been times where, for example, Hashim Amla didn't perform really well. There was years where he didn't perform well, or a season, or even Virat Kohli is not performing well for the past 2 years. But people know what he can do because he's been given a long-term opportunity and he's shown over the long term that he can produce. So yeah, just my thoughts on it. So it's not just Zubair directly; it's being consistent with what Cricket South Africa are looking for.
Further,
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think if Hamza hit the ground running, right, and he made a century or two in his first 5 games, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. He probably wouldn't have been dropped in the first place. And I think it was a bit of bad luck as well that contributed to him being dropped, because he played those 5 tests. He averaged only 18. He made a good 62 against India, was it? I think. And then we didn't play for a while, but he did play for the Cobras. And then he went badly out of form in domestic cricket, where he could barely score a run, right? And so then at that stage, they didn't feel that they could pick him again based on the very poor form he was in for the Cobras. So it was like a combination of the two that added up to him not getting a game from there. And now that they're bringing him back in. I'd just like to touch on that Ryan Rickleton being backup wicketkeeper point and maybe not getting an opportunity because of that. I would have agreed with that based on how Verena didn't get it T20 match, although he was in the squad when Klaassen was playing, and we didn't have any other batsmen. It was ridiculous to me that he didn't play in that Pakistan series. But in the Test matches, Verreynne did get those 2 games against the West Indies when Bavuma got injured, while Quinton was still playing. So he was the backup keeper, but he did come in as a pure batsman for that series. So I can't see the reason to not play Rickleton in the same way now that KP is injured.
And I agree with you there. So I'm calling for consistency. I want to see consistency. I don't understand why certain players are getting pigeonholed to specific um, positions and said, okay, you can only play in this position. That's the only player you can play. Um, Rassi can move up the order too. He can move to 3. He's batted there before. So it's not like we have a major issue. The major headache is who they're going to pick at that number 3 position. Now, I saw a comment about transformation and those quota talks and stuff like that. Because, like I said, quota is not game by game, but it's over a season. So there are going to be a couple of matches where we are not going to meet the requirements as per se. So I want to also stress that I don't think they're going to be under pressure to necessarily pick a player of color in a batting position as a replacement for KP necessarily. I don't think that pressure is there necessarily. Maybe it is. I don't know what the targets is and how far they're off the targets. That's also going to need to be found out because I can't go back and work that out. That's impossible for me to work out myself. I'm actually going to have to contact one of the selectors and say, how far are we actually off the targets over here? Because normally what they used to do is to push everybody into the T20 team to try and level out the targets. But since we have a World Cup coming around the corner, it's going to be very difficult for them to do that. So where are they going to fix that? Personally, though, I think that Ryan Rickleton has done enough in the last 2 seasons to warrant his spot in the squad, and they can pick him as a batter alone. But then I ask again, if Ryan Rickleton doesn't come to the party and he fails, how many opportunities does he get before we start calling for his head too? Because I feel like Kyle Verreynne has gotten a couple of games, but is it a long enough run for us to say that he doesn't deserve an opportunity to be in the test side? Um, I want to know, like, I want to get an understanding of how long does a player get, or how long should a player get before they get dropped. I'm looking at New Zealand, and there's a opportunity over here. If it's a transformation issue, there's an opportunity here to drop a white player that hasn't really performed that well in the last test for a player of color that can maybe utilize the conditions and the green tracks in New Zealand. That is Duan Olivier for Steerman. I feel that Steerman has more pace, has more ability with the new ball, can move the ball around, and that could maybe level it out when you're talking about transformation. So there is other options available to the South Africans to level that out because they can play Rickleton at 4 and then have those players in the team and then put in Glenton Steerman instead of Duan Olivier to level it out. So that's also a possibility. So I don't think necessarily that Zubair Hamza getting selected is because of because of the quota discussions or the transformation. I think they've always looked at Zubair Hamza as a potential replacement for Amla back in the day, and potentially you can see in SAA team as well, they gave him an opportunity in SAA as well. So he was kind of the next in line after Tony de Zorzi. Now, Tony de Zorzi opens in domestic cricket, but he's batting 4 for SAA. So there are a lot of batters that we have in the system that can bat anywhere between 1 and 4. Rickleton spoke to us and he told us that too. 1 and 4 is where he would like to bat, but if they tell him to bat 5 or 6, he would take it. He would take any opportunity, and most players would do that. So I'm very interested to see what they're going to actually do because there's a lot of things to discuss when it comes to that. But to me, clearly, I mean, I looked at, I can't find it now, but I don't know who it was now that said it. Let me just try to find the team. Um, there was a team here we go, from Lorenzo. And I actually agree with this 11. Alga, Markram, Rassi, Rickleton, Bavuma, Verena, Janssen, Maharaj, KG, Steerman, and Gidi. I actually like this lineup. What is your guys' thoughts on this lineup? Let's go around. Aditya, Munir, and then Werner.
Completely agree. This is exactly the sort of 11 that I would pick, without a doubt.
Cool. Munir? Hello. Munir, are you there? Okay, Werner, you can go so long.
Yeah, I agree with the team. This is what I would go with as well. Maybe I'll even bet Rickleton at 3 and keep Rossi at 4, because when KP comes back, he'll slot back in at 3. And Rossi being used to at batting at number 4. So I wouldn't be against Rossi batting at 3, but I just think it's unnecessary to change that around, knowing that KP will just come straight back into the squad as soon as he can. Probably the next series, which will be against Bangladesh. But as far as the 11 players, I agree. I would also play Steerman ahead of Olivier. I would even go with Sipamba, but at this stage, I don't think Olivier provides enough. And I think that was sort of proven again against the Cobras over the weekend, or was it over the weekend? But yeah, the last 4-day game when he wasn't really effective. So yeah, I would go with Steerman based on his ability to move the ball around. But I am also not against Hervé playing. I would be perfectly fine with Hervé playing as well.
Cool, Munir, you want to say anything?
Yeah, it depends. Like maybe the pitches aren't very conducive to spin. So then instead of Maharaj, we can play another batsman, and then Janssen can be at 8. I think that will strengthen our batting lineup, and I think Janssen at 7 for the long term is not necessarily the best option. Yeah, but it depends on the pitches, because if the pitches need spin, then obviously Maharaj needs to play, and I think that's a good team.
Yeah, I saw someone mention that maybe it's a little bit unfair with regards to Dwan Olivier. Well, I don't think it's unfair. The reason I'm saying that is because I thought we were gonna get a different Dwan Olivier to the one we got, and that same Dwan Olivier is performing exactly the same way that he's performing in domestic cricket. I watched him in domestic. I watched him here, and it seems to be exactly the same Dwan Olivier. We can't have a bowler bowling 126 kilometers per hour in this team on this wicket. Like, it's not the same Dwan Olivier that I thought we were going to get, unfortunately. And I haven't seen enough of movement in the seam, movement or skill from moving the ball around perspective to say that he deserves to be to have an opportunity in the team. But then again, Clinton Steelman was supposed to get an opportunity before Dwan Olivier because he's been unlucky. There's always something that happened to Clinton before we thought he was going to get his opportunity, and we've been calling for it for quite some time. And a new ball bowler, that's who he is. You know, his first spells are extremely, extremely good. And unfortunately, Andif Nokia is not available, because otherwise we wouldn't be having this discussion between Olivier and someone like Clinton Steerman. But yeah, that's also up to debate. But the question I want to ask is, we're going to give Ryan Rickleton an opportunity. Ryan Rickleton goes to Christchurch and he smashes a massive score, or he does extremely well for South Africa. What do we do at that point? Does KP come right back into the team again when he's fit? Is that the criteria that we'll be going with when it comes to this?
Definitely. KP was great against India. He should come straight back in, even if Ryan Rickleton scores a bunch of runs. And that could be, I think I said this on Twitter earlier as well, that would be the ideal scenario, is Ryan Rickleton then coming in and scoring big runs, because that means when he sets out, we know we have this guy on the bench who's raring to go, who is good enough to do it at the international stage because he's now proven it against New Zealand. And then that'll put pressure on Rassi to perform. It'll put pressure on even Verena to perform. So that would be a good scenario. But the same can then again be said with Arvia, because if Arvia plays and he does very well at number 3, that then puts pressure on Markram, right? So if Markram doesn't perform this series against New Zealand, maybe Arvia then goes up to open against Bangladesh and KP comes back in at 3. So both scenarios I'm perfectly fine with.
Mm-hmm. It's a good headache to have, Aditya.
It is a good headache to have, but irrespective of who performs in that slot, whether it's Sarah Larvio or Ryan Rickleton or Zubair Hamza for that matter, I think ultimately when KP is fit again, he has to slot back in, and I think that's also been the precedent that Bouch and the team management have set for injured players and incumbents coming in. So that's totally understandable. But yes, it is a solid headache to have, undoubtedly. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you this from India, where Karun Nair scored a triple hundred and an unbeaten triple hundred, and he never got a chance to play for India ever after that. So that should tell you something.
And also, Munir, I want to ask you because you had some good points about dropping players, etc. And I mean, some people calling in the live chat over here talking about Calvarino to get dropped already after 4 tests. I mean, it's ridiculous. With 2 of those tests he played as a keeper. I want to ask you about that dropping policy and the mentality behind picking teams, etc. Because the extended runs are so important to give confidence. We heard Ryan Rickleton in his interview. He never even played a test yet, and he was already talking about the intensity, the difference in the intensity. So for him to see that from the bench and just being amongst the team just proves it that the intensity is different. And some of our players maybe need a longer time to adjust to that intensity.
Yeah, I think the dropping Calvarain is a bit. I don't know what to say about that comment. It's a strange thing to say. But it's a difficult one because uh, there's no like set limit to say like, okay, 10 tests is enough or 15 tests is enough. So it's hard to like give a direct amount of numbers to say like, okay, we've given him 15 tests and this is enough to say that he's good enough or not good enough. So I think it depends per the player, but I think there should be definitely a minimum amount of tests. And I also think the tests should be taken into account. So like Zubair Hamza played India away, I think. And I think the entire batting lineup didn't do too well there. So I think also you should also take into account the average of the entire group combined. So maybe averaging 30 when a team is scoring 200 is not too bad. But when you're averaging 25 and then the average scores 450, then I think also that has to be taken into account. So yeah, so for the last test matches, for example, people are scoring 200, 250. So a 40 on that pitch is like really good. But maybe if you're playing maybe Pakistan away and the pitch is really flat and you score 500 and you score 40, there's obviously one 40 that's more valuable than the other 40. So I think context is also really important because you could get 5 test matches but then get really difficult pitches. And so I think that's unfair. You could get 5 test matches and get really flat pitches and you score 200s and then you in the team and the other person not in the team. So I think, yeah, that should also be taken into account.
Okay, let's get final thoughts, everybody. Let's start with Aditya, and then we can go Werner, and then Munir to end off.
Well, I guess the team is in the midst of another curveball again, as Dinago put it, and they have to deal with another 10-day quarantine in New Zealand and play
I
on
laughed when he said that, actually.
and play at a ground that they haven't played at since 1999. So yeah, plenty of challenges there for Dean Elgar, Mark Bouch, and the team. But the $1 million question is who's going to replace KP, and I think personally I would love to see Ryan Rickleton take that spot. Um, but then again, Sarah Larvey has been there for a while, and he he also deserves to play. But either way, I think it's a difficult decision to make. I just hope they make the right one.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big series for a couple of guys because I think they'll probably stick with Holyfield for the first game, even though I wouldn't. I think they will. So it's going to be a big game for him, and it's going to be a very big series for Aiden Markram because this might be his last Test series opportunity for quite a while if he doesn't perform now. Um, Personally, because Alves is waiting doesn't come in for KP. He's still squad as a backup opener, so it's going to be a big series for both those guys. I quickly looked at Church at the venue where they're going to play, and the last Christchurch, yeah, sorry. The last 3 years, New Zealand hasn't played a frontline spinner at Christchurch. So it'll be interesting to see whether we still stick with Maharaj because I mean they stuck with him through Centurion and Wanderers when we said he shouldn't be playing there. So I guess the chances are pretty good that he'll play at Christchurch as well, even if New Zealand end up not going in with a spinner. So it'll be interesting because if it really is as seamer friendly as it has been over the last 3 years, and New Zealand still only seamers, I prefer us to go the same route and rather pick the extra batsman. And we can do with the bulking up in the batting lineup, to be honest, even if it means playing both Arve and Rickleton, then lower down the order. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. It's going to be a big series. Good luck to them with a 10-day quarantine. It doesn't sound like much fun. New Zealand are very, very strict, and also the reason why KP can't go, even though he'll probably be fine to go. He'll be over his and everything, but New Zealand's like, no, not even close, and that's why they didn't even send an under-19 team to the World Cup. So yeah, good luck to them.
I mean, just to add one last point, sorry. Interestingly, there's been 8 cases of COVID in the Indian camp right ahead of the West Indies series. And Shikhar Dhawan and Ruturaj Gaikwad are among those who are rumored to have COVID.
Hectic. So, Munir, final words from you. I mean, I would like to see a 7. I want to see them be brave and try 7 batters for change, man. We've all been calling for it for so long. But Munir, what's your final words?
I probably just want 7 batsmen to play, and I want Jansen at 8. I really think Jansen at 7 is really too high. So, but yeah, other than that, I think I said everything. Looking forward to the series, and thanks for having me on the show.
No problem, bro. We want you back again to give some insight. Guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to smash the like button. Also, subscribe to this channel. Click that notification bell for all future videos as well. And also, don't forget to subscribe to Cricket Fanatics Magazine monthly. Every single issue is 100% free, straight to your inbox every single month. The link is on the screen as well as in the description. Go ahead and subscribe straight away. Really enjoyed the episode. I like the different views, guys. And I really enjoyed talking to everybody and hearing your different views. Let's see what South Africa do. We've got some time to digest everything. We'll obviously do a preview, of course, before the game and all of those things. As per usual, you know how we do it here at Cricket Fanatics Magazine. So tell all your friends and family to subscribe to this channel, specifically if you are South African and a South African fan. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow with another daily show. Take care.